You thought you could be without me for a long period of time, but guess what? Chris's hostile takeover of the smoke-filled room is over. I've regained control. Chris is out. Finkston is out. In all truth, thank you to both of them for hosting the last couple of weeks, as I enjoyed maybe a little too much being a dad for the first time. But I'm back because I couldn't take it anymore. We're going to jump into some topics. Let me introduce our guests. We've got Aaron Delmar. He's a member of the Republican State Central Committee for the state of Illinois, also the Palatine Township Republican Committeeman, and the Township Highway Commissioner, and I'm sure a bunch of other titles. Delmar, what's going on, buddy?
Thanks so much for having me, Colin. Great to see you back in the seat. Congratulations on becoming a daddy. I've been a daddy for a couple of years now. You're doing a great job, and best to Abby. I'm looking forward to today's discussion, having some fun.
I like it. We've also got Kyle Strauder. He's the political director and deputy campaign manager for Mike Bost in their successful primary campaign. He also served as a field director for the Illinois Republican Party. He's been in politics for a while now. Kyle, what's up, buddy?
Hey, what's up, Colin? Thanks for having me on.
Glad to have you. We've got a third guest, hopefully, who's supposed to be joining us. Haven't heard from him yet, so here's hoping he's able to jump in. But we're recording this, and we had to get going. We also have from Cor's political team, Chris Jackowiak and Michael Butler. Guys, I know you really missed me. I'm glad to be back with you.
Well, the hostile takeover of the company was short-lived. Unfortunately, I was unable to wrangle the business documents out from the hands of Ryan and the finance team. So unfortunately, we will not be unionizing anytime soon, and we will not be putting all of our money into the Democratic Party. Instead, we are still Republicans, so I'm sorry to be here.
Yeah, well, I just want to ask you, how'd you guys do with the eclipse? I know it was a big deal, and I mean, obviously, we all learned something thanks to Sheila Jackson Lee that the moon is a planet. It's mostly made up of gases. I mean, we all learned something about space thanks to that eclipse. So I'm just curious, if you guys learned anything too, because I thought that was pretty fascinating. I didn't realize the moon was made of gas.
I think the whole when I was downstate, it was like 100% visibility, and there was license plates from every state imaginable and even other countries. So we had a great time down here, and good revenue for Southern Illinois, which we definitely need.
Well, this is going to be my latest example when people talk about politics and say the best and the brightest get into politics, because Jackson Lee is a member of the Science Committee and she's a ranking member on the Space and Aeronautics Subcommittee. This is like that California congresswoman years ago who was afraid that an island might tip over if too many people were on one side of it. These are the people making laws in this country. So, anyways, one more special introduction I've got to make. My darling wife is here with my little boy, and we got to give him his debut on the smoke-filled room. So everybody say hi to Theodore Rex Corbett, my little boy. Say hello, buddy. Say hello. You see his little onesie there? I don't know if you can read it. Oh, where's the, here we go. It's a little big. Hold on. Let's see if we can get this on. Because it's my favorite onesie, so we got to see if we can get it on screen. Oh, it's a struggle. It says Daddy's Mighty Guy. You can't really read it on there, but he's my mighty guy. My little T-Rex. So say hi to everybody, Teddy. He was awake until we were waiting for our next guest, and then, of course, over those 10 minutes, he went to sleep. So it would have been perfect if we'd started on time. But while I have my boy with me, I'm going to use him as a prop here for this next discussion, because we got to talk about something that I've been waiting to talk about for 3 weeks. I almost packed my little guy in the car when he was 3 days old, 4 days old, whatever it was, and rushed to the office, to the headquarters, to record something when I saw our Illinois Congresswoman call IVF morally dubious. And I got to tell you, it set me off. So I put a op-ed in the Chicago Tribune to set the record straight. I was as kind to Mary Miller as I could in that. But here in my platform, we got to talk about this, and we're going to talk about it for a minute. So I apologize to anybody I put in a bad position here, but I've been holding this thing in for 3 weeks. So for background, 4 House Republicans sent a letter to Joe Biden's White House saying they had a plethora of ethical concerns and questions about IVF, calling it morally dubious. So let's just start here. Miss Miller and your 3 colleagues, why don't you look at my little boy and tell me that his existence is morally dubious? Tell me that this little guy does not have a right to life. Tell my wife she's not allowed to be a mother. After she dealt with Crohn's and she was at the age of 8, after that led to her getting colon cancer at the age of 28, then an ileostomy, which led to serious problems being able to get pregnant. Tell me, after I've wanted to be a father for 20 years, it's been my dream. Tell me after when my wife got cancer and the doctors came to us and said that by treating her cancer, it might lead to infertility. It might lead to us not being able to be parents. And I said immediately, without even a hesitation, that my wife's health was more important than anything, despite the fact that being a dad was my biggest dream and had been for a very long time. Despite that fact, my wife's health was my number one thing. And so I said, without hesitation, absolutely take care of my wife. If we can't have children, we can't have children. Tell me I can't be a dad. After a long path to get here, we tried to get pregnant for 7.5 years. We were on IVF for over 3 years. The pain and discomfort of that for my amazing wife, who's here but doesn't want to be on camera. The exorbitant cost, the restrictions on things we couldn't do in our personal relationship. Giggity, if you know what I'm talking about. The mental struggles of dealing with this, the many failures, the round after round after round that didn't succeed, a miscarriage that devastated us last year. Tell us after that long, long path that we don't get to be parents because you think IVF is morally dubious. I'll tell you this, my son, he's a gift from God. He's a miracle given to us through IVF. And I couldn't be more proud to have him here. IVF aligns with the foundational tenets of my Republican Party, of our Republican Party. It's pro-life, it's pro-family, it's pro-individual freedom. IVF is something Republicans support, and do not tell me otherwise. But she's not the only person I'm angry at. We got to talk about Tammy Duckworth, because there's no excuse for Tammy Duckworth. She has been through IVF. She has a child because of IVF. And yet she is playing political games with this important issue, and it sickens me. She's using a common political trick. She's got a bill in the U.S. Senate that is supposedly pro-IVF, and yet it has hidden in there provisions, what's called poison pills in politics, that Republicans cannot support. And she knows it, by the way. Those poison pills are waiving the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, potentially subjecting religious and anti-abortion rights organizations to lawsuits. These are serious things Republicans can't support. And Duckworth knows it, by the way. If you Google this, there are dozens of posts by Democrat operatives, by far-left organizations praising Duckworth because they know that this is a political play. They even say it, that this has put Republicans in a trick bag. And she's playing it up. She's talking about how her quote, not a single one of those IVF-loving Republicans have tried to co-sponsor my bill, she said. Well, guess what? We can't co-sponsor this bill. Republicans say repeatedly we support IVF, but we can't co-sponsor that bill. Yet Duckworth isn't saying, hey, let's work together to protect IVF. No, that's not what Duckworth is saying. Duckworth is using this issue as a political pawn to try to gain points to help Democrats win in November, and that's all this is. And you know what? She's no better than Mary Miller. She's no better than anybody else out there playing games with the lives of little ones like this. And so I say both, I gave Duckworth or Miller some crap. I got to give Tammy Duckworth some crap. It is absolutely unconscionable what she's doing. So you too look at my boy and say that he shouldn't be here, that other families shouldn't have this opportunity. Tammy Duckworth, stop playing politics with the lives of little ones like my tiny little Teddy here and do the right thing. All right, my rant's done. If anybody else want to talk about this topic and get yourself in trouble, feel free.
I don't know if I'm going to get myself in trouble, but I just think, like, obviously it's IVF is like a great medical development. It's important. It's going to allow a lot of people that otherwise would not be able to have children to be able to have them. And it's just something that we're, politics like invades everything. It's invaded this, unfortunately, because it shouldn't really be a political topic like this. What Tammy Duckworth's doing is absolutely terrible. But we need people to kind of like come together and let's navigate this issue. Like, obviously some people have some concerns with the process and what do you do with embryos, these frozen embryos, if, it is successful and they don't intend to have additional children. So we're going to have to kind of figure out a way to navigate this and make sure that everybody's taken care of because it's important. It's an important issue.
Yeah, and Michael, I said that in my op-ed. there are concerns with this process in terms of the way it's done. I mean, my wife's medical team, they were amazingly patient. I had to speak to so many of them on the phone. I had to have them walk me through the process of what they were and weren't going to do with our embryos and everything else. And they were able to work within those guidelines. So to say if these Republicans came out and said, you know what, we just want to make sure it's done right, we're good. But to come out and say that the process itself is morally dubious, that you have ethical concerns about it, that's not the same thing. And that's the problem here is it's how you do it here, how you go about this. And don't say you're against IVF. Just say, hey, listen, we want to make sure it's done right. I share that concern. And look, he's here, and we followed all of my moral and ethical guidelines that we had to follow to make that happen.
Well, it's one of those things, we talk about it a lot on here, on other topics as well, about the importance of messaging and making sure that you're using the appropriate language, because, you know, one misguided comment can negatively impact Republicans all across the country. And maybe that, you know, obviously that wasn't Mary's intention. It wasn't these congressmen's intention, but, you know, it's going to be on a mailer. It's going to be on a TV ad, and it's going to be used against other people, just like we use comments that AOC and other, you know, elected Elon Omar and other elected officials use. So we just all have
that's the responsibility you have as a legislator.
Careful.
You've got to understand you represent this whole party. So when you say things, all of us have to answer for it. And that's what I think this congresswoman didn't understand. And listen, I've just, even by calling her a knucklehead, I got a bunch of people angry at me. We had a potential client who then refused to sign with us just because we happened to call her a knucklehead about this. And I got to be honest, that is the nicest word I could come up with in that situation. So they should realize just how angry I was. Because here, let me attack your children. Let me tell you, your children's existence is morally dubious. And let's see if you respond in a favorable way and if you like that. Trust me, knucklehead was the nicest word I could come up with. Anyways, all right, everybody good. All right, let's say goodbye to my tiny little Teddy. All right, buddy, I got to hold your head up because you're still a little preemie. Oh, I know. This has been rough. Thank you for doing it, buddy. Thank you. I know. You're a good boy. All right, pass you on to Mama. All right,
guys. I just want to say, Collin, I think it's really great that Mike, really is kind about the whole situation and cut in on that. I know that he's been having some challenges with Teddy being taller than him already. And, he's kind of looked past all of that to see the fighter side.
Yeah, it's my little preemie 6-pounder is already giving Michael a run for his money. I like it.
In the Butler family, he'd be fully grown by now, right? That's fully grown in the Butler side.
So eating Chick-fil-A, sitting at the kitchen table. All right, let's jump into our political topics. We got a lot to cover, and I've already killed a bunch of time here on this. So we've had a couple of developments just in the last week. We had a Democrat and a Republican state legislator retire. We had a huge surprise, Tim Ozinga retire out of House District 37. That was a big surprise that I know Chris can fill us in on. And Gillespie retired to take a role in the Pritzker administration. That was less of a big shocker, though we didn't expect it to happen, but not as big of a shocker as Ozinga. Chris, take us away on the Ozinga one. The Gillespie one's just interesting, but I live in Senate District 27. Republicans aren't going to win this seat, and we really struggled to find a candidate last time around. There'll be a special. I just don't know that this is a district we're going to play in this time around. So I don't know that 27 is going to be huge news, but hey, listen, it's my district, so I really hope a solid Republican runs for it. But House District 37, Ozinga, I mean, he's the head of the Big Tent Coalition, which is a big force in Republican politics in Illinois. Employs a number of people who are very active, like Lynn O'Brien and Tom Morrison and others who are very active in Republican campaigns throughout the state and the Republican Party. So a lot of questions about what happens with Big Tent. And then, of course, he's the Republican chairman in Will County. So what happens with that? So, Chris, I know you're on the inside. There's some things you can say, some things you can't say. So don't burn any sources. But what can you tell us about what's going on?
So this was kind of a surprise, wasn't it, everyone? I remember I was sitting on my couch watching the White Sox lose Monday evening. Another frustrating loss for the boys in black and white. When I'm scrolling through Twitter and I see Patrick Fink sent the Illinois tweet, Tim Ozinga has resigned, and I immediately had to jumped off my couch and ran to my desk so I could start making phone calls. So thanks, Tim, for telling absolutely nobody that you were going to resign and putting, the Will County guy in the tough situation. No, this was a shock. This was a shock that it happened like this, but not really a shock that it happened at all. Tim is somebody who wants to be involved politically. He was in charge of HRO for a brief period of time when the cycle started. Eventually moved out of that position to focus purely on the Big Tent and the Will County Republican Central Committee. Springfield was never something that really suited Tim Ozinga. He's the type of guy, he wants to be in a leadership position. He wants to be driving the ship. And when you're just one of like 10 people who's a Republican elected official down in Springfield, that's not going to get you anywhere. So the fact that he resigned itself isn't that interesting. There were some news reports out this week that said that he was also resigning his position as head of the Will County Republican Central Committee. That is not true. He came out with a statement yesterday and stated that he is, in fact, staying in that position and plans to stay in that position for the near future. Next Wednesday's convention, so we'll see how that goes. So it looks like he's staying in at the Will County Republican Central Committee. There is a meeting on Friday, which will determine who is going to be the next state representative, both in fact and be on the ballot in November. This is a very, very Republican district. This is about Trump won this district by about 17. When Ozinga first ran, he won by like a 2-1 margin. So this is a very, very Republican district with a lot of Republicans vying for this position. Some of the names that have been thrown around have been former state Senate candidate Patrick Sheehan. He's been praised by such publications as Capital Facts and the Illinois Review, so he's getting a very, very broad, stream of support. So he's a big name that's been thrown out there. I haven't heard anything specific in regards to whether or not he's actually going to get the seat, but it's a name that's been thrown out there, and he'd be a great pick for the seat if they picked him. There are some other elected officials from Frankfort, Homer Glen, who might be interested, Orland Park, Tinley Park, very Republican area, but I mean, this is all up to Ozinga. Ozinga's got the votes. Whoever Ozinga wants, he gets to pick. So we'll see what happens here. Shock to many, but that it happened like this, but not really a shock that it happened at all.
Chris, and I, again, don't want to put you in a bad spot here, but this is a very rushed timeline. They have 30 days to file this, and they're doing it in much, much, much less than 30. It doesn't take somebody, even remedial at math to do the math here and realize they're doing this fast because the convention is next week. So it's suffice to say, Ozinga is going to make this choice, and it's pretty clear he knows who he wants. Otherwise, it wouldn't be moving this fast. Am I crazy by saying that?
That's certainly how it appears. I think a lot of this has to do with the convention. There has been wins of Ozinga having challengers for his position as the chairman of the Will County State Central Committee. If he does, I don't anticipate he'll lose that fight. But I'm sure that this has a lot to do with the fact that there's a convention next Wednesday and they just want to avoid any potential hiccups. That's what I'm assuming.
Makes sense.
Well,
the good news is neither seat's really up. I mean, good news for us on the Ozinga one in that, that district, no Democrat's going to win that district. So this doesn't have long-term implications for the balance of in Springfield.
I can tell you a couple of things from what I'm hearing on the political side up by us. One thing that Ozinga hasn't mentioned is if he's staying on the state central committee. Most people forget not only is he the state representative or former state representative and the Will County chairman, he's also the state central committeeman for the first district, which we have our state convention in 2 months, which, he'll have to appoint all of his committee members. He'll have to appoint all of his delegates, so on and so forth. I'm hearing kind of the same thing that you're hearing about Patrick Sheehan. I think he's a great candidate. Many of you don't remember or may remember when he took on, Illinois' famous wife beater, or pardon me, I should say woman beater. I don't want to keep them all into, one group. Senator Mike Hastings, the king of the women headlock. Patrick came really, really close to beating him in that Senate district. And, if Mike didn't have that great upper hook, I think he, might have gotten taken out in that race. But, I think he's got a great candidate. Comes from a great lineage. He's a Lockport trustee. I think he's going to have a lot to offer. And I think even after this race, I think he can hold that seat against any of the primaries. So I hope so. And the reason, just to also clarify, it's Ozinga's pick because he's also the chairman and committeeman. So he has the weighted vote to be able to make that appointment without anybody else's input. Because we're looking at the math and what you have in Kane and what you have, pardon me, not Kane, but in Cook. He carries all the weighted votes. So I would agree with Collin. I think this thing has already been orchestrated and the optics are already there. And I like seeing Patrick get that spot. Well, maybe one day go back and take another shot at Hastings.
It's another indication of, run even if you don't know if you can win. I mean, we saw this with Leslie Munger and so many people over the years. Run if you believe in something. Run if you want to represent your party. Sometimes, not every time, but sometimes long term it plays out. Sheehan gave that a race. Many of us felt like that was a race we could have won, but either way, he did certainly put his heart and soul into that race. And now it turns out he very well may be possibly a state representative in the very near future. So when you believe in something, stand up for what you believe. It doesn't always pay off every time, but do the right thing, and many times it will pay off. And that's, I think, another indication. Let me move us along just for time. Go to our next topic here, which is something I saw while I was out, and I was kind of shocked you guys didn't cover it on an SFR. But these are the kind of topics I tend to bring to the table, which is Eric Sorenson in IL-17, our #1 pickup opportunity in the congressional map in Illinois. Is getting a lot of flack for being apparently one of the biggest promoters of drag shows for children in northwestern Illinois. And he was asked by Fox News Digital, or he was asked by somebody, I guess, on camera if he regretted pushing and hosting these drag shows for children. And he said no, that he does not regret it at all. And that has gotten a ton of play. Well, that was back from 2021, but it's gotten a ton of play since. It's clear Republicans have their sights set on IL-17. It's also clear to me that Sorenson feels pretty dang safe, because if he thinks that in that working class district, which it's incredibly union heavy working class, that is not a deep blue, suburban, progressive, Trump hating kind of district. If he thinks this is going to play in that district, he is nuts. I mean, if that's the race he's going to run, then I think Republicans have got a really dang good chance at picking up IL-17.
I think it all depends.
Well, they got a really good candidate out there, Judge Joe McGraw. I got an opportunity to see him speak at Henry County. He presents really well. He's got a lot of time to bench. He's very articulate. He's going to be a tough one to beat. I think what we should be, as Republicans, be changing the narrative just a little bit and saying, instead of questioning, should kids be going to drag shows? Should kids not be going to drag shows? The question should be is, why do drag shows seek an audience of children? Right? Because I think, Collin, you're a new parent now. I've been a parent for almost 21 years, right? Because we understand as parents that your kids will start emulating and will start, heroizing anything you take them to. In my generation, it was G.I. Joe, it was He-Man. We're going to go out. We're going to be Roadblock. It's going to be so much. It's going to be so great, right? We're playing guns. Now they're trying to change the narrative, right? They want it to be, like RuPaul's going to be the new He-Man, right? This is where I think the Democrats are trying to take that. And I think you need to think of, like I said, why do they seek an audience of children? I think that's the question that people should be asking.
Yeah, it's a fair point.
From the political side of things, I think the hopes for IL-17 are all contingent on whether or not the NRCC thinks we have a chance. That's the unfortunate thing about federal races like this. But if the NRCC doesn't think that there's a chance of taking out Sorenson, there's not going to be a chance of taking out Sorenson. So McGraw has to take advantage of this, and the way to do that is by using this for fundraising potential. You can raise a lot of money off of digital fundraising or whatnot off of your opponent hosting Drag Queen Story Hour for children. So that's what I would do if I was Joe McGraw, start raising some money off of this. And if you can continue raising money and building a profile out of this race, the NRCC might wave their hands over you and say, you might be a congressman. Maybe, we'll see.
I think he deserves an award, Sorenson does, because he gets asked all the time about his feeling about running for re-election in the Biden economy. And every time his answer just gets worse. It's like 15 times now, and he has not been able to find a good answer. So it's kind of amazing.
We've been talking about this for a couple of years now about IL-17, that Sorenson is just he's not a great politician. I mean, you look at some people and they're decent in their position, makes them harder to beat. Caston's not easy to beat. Underwood's not easy to beat. Sorenson is not in that category. So it's not only on paper a winnable district, but Sorenson is just is a defeatable opponent. And so, and you see it playing out here. Just again, not knowing your district, not knowing what plays in your district. I mean, he's from Rockford. This doesn't even play in Rockford, let alone the more rural parts of that district. It's stupid.
Well,
I think a lot of people got scared if they saw what happened with Esther Joy King, right? I mean, I was there at Tazewell, Peoria County Lincoln Day dinner where they had their quinceanera for her by Darren LaHood, and Mike Pence came out and they were going to bless her as the next Illinois congressman from the 17th district, and that didn't work out so hot. So, I think if everyone really had a strong feeling of winning that district from a political standpoint, you would have seen more than just two candidates in that primary. Right. I mean, Judge McGraw is great, and I'm looking forward to having him out here to Chicago. We're going to be hosting a fundraiser for him. But if that was really as close as everybody thought, that would have been a way crowded field in that Republican primary.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. I mean, that's why we've had recruitment problems all across the board throughout the whole state this cycle, just because I think, well, we saw this in IL6. Let's look back 2 years ago. I mean, when Jeannie Ives was not successful against Caston, the NRCC said, we're not going to come play because if Ives couldn't beat Caston, then we don't think anybody could beat Caston. It's this lack of understanding that, Ives ran an okay campaign, one better than we thought she would, but she didn't run an amazing campaign. Same with Esther Joy King. She did not run as strong of a campaign as she could. That was a winnable district. I think you've got this sort of bias that's created in DC of just Illinois never seems to work out. They hate Illinois. Even the Trump campaign will put offices in 49 states, but they'll skip Illinois just because this happens cycle after cycle after cycle, where they get excited in the last couple of weeks, dump a few million, it doesn't work out. So they say, screw it, we're done with that state. And here in IL 17, I think this is a real opportunity, a significant opportunity. So I hope they come in faster than, let's say, mid-August or mid-October, which is what they tend to do, because that's a race. If we lay the groundwork, we could actually win it.
Well,
I think they're
McGraw
still mad at us about Joe Walsh back in 2010.
Well, I would be
You
too.
know.
Kyle, what were you going to say?
I was going to say McGraw, I noticed, was on the first round of endorsements from some of the big super PACs. So hopefully that's good news.
Yeah, agreed. We'll keep watching it. All right, Chris, let's talk about it. Sad news out of Cook County. The county clerk, Karen Yarborough, has passed away. Again, fairly shocking news in the past week. I don't think this is a race Republicans can really play in, though we're going to have an opportunity, right? There should be a special. So are you hearing that Republicans might slate somebody? Are we going to at least give it a shot? What do you think?
I think we have to wait to see what the Democrats are going to do here, because technically they can avoid a special election if they wait like 4 months to appoint somebody, which why the law is structured like this, I have no idea. It just seems like a giant loophole. But I think it's all dependent on who the Cook County Democratic Party slates. Preckwinkle is obviously in charge of both the county and the county Democratic Party. So whoever gets into the county clerk's office is going to be Tony Preckwinkle's choice. It's in short, in regards to the woman herself, I mean, it's a tragedy that Karen Yarborough died. One of the biggest narratives out of the past few weeks, especially with the late ballots coming in for the state's attorney's race, was just how well the Cook County Clerk's office was doing in comparison to the City Board of Elections, and that speaks to what Karen was able to do.
Chris, let's be honest, though. I mean, I got to be clear. The office ran way better under David Orr. It took a giant step back under the current clerk. And comparing to the city of Chicago and saying, well, at least they did better than that. That's like saying you're a valedictorian of your homeschool class. Like anyone would have been better than Chicago in that one.
I don't know who you made mad at the Cook County Clerk's office. I have never had a problem with the Cook County Clerk's office. When I send in my FOIAs or my data requests, they get back to me usually by the end of the day. So within the hour usually. So I don't know whose Cheerios you did something to. But
I think it all emulated from the state's attorney's office, because they've been coming after me since we tried to take Kim Foxx out. But if any Democrats are watching, I will say, I think a great choice for slating here. I think there's two names you should put on your short list as the two finalists: Lori Lightfoot, Kim Foxx. I think both of those would make great county clerks. I really encourage you to look that way.
No, I think we can all make everybody happy here and slate Mary Flowers for Cook County Clerk. I think it all works. It's one of those all things work out in the end. Mary, you're not going to be down in Springfield anymore. You don't want to be down in Springfield anymore. But here you go. You can be county clerk. I think everyone will be happy in the end. But seriously, politically speaking, depending on who the Democrats slate, if it's somebody nutsy cuckoo bananas, I think the Cook County Republicans should run somebody and actually run a decent race, because they've got no chance versus Eileen O'Neill Burke for state's attorney. I mean, that's kind of just a fool's errand even trying in that race at this point. The clerk of the circuit court race versus Sparopoulos, that's going nowhere. So why not, if depending on who they slate, maybe just maybe slate a good candidate for clerk, and we'll see what happens here. But again, depends on who they slate, how close they are to Preckwinkle. But I think some moves can be made here, especially with a special election.
Aaron, you served as the Cook County Republican chairman for a good period of time. What are your thoughts?
I also serve on the slating committee for candidates, so that falls right, into my depth. So I've been answering phone calls, and nobody's ready to stand up right now and run countywide, because we haven't had a countywide executive in Cook County since 1992, when I was a sophomore in high school. Right, Collin was still in his diapers, so Butler wasn't even here yet. So we have to figure. We have to figure out how we're going to get together. I agree with you. We do have Bob Fioretti, who is an amazing Democrat running as Republican this year for state's attorney. He's our perennial candidate. We love Bob. Bob has agreed to run for every office for the next 7 years. So we are sure we're going to have a solid slate.
Aaron, does that make you jealous? I mean, I feel like Bob's going to break your record.
Oh my God. No, but I guess the difference is I win elections when I'm on the ballot, right? It's a little bit different. But no, we are taking it seriously, right? I mean, unfortunately, we only have one Republican on the Cook County board right now, which is a travesty. In 2018, prior to that election, we had 5. We're trying to pick up seats. They've done an amazing job of gerrymandering the district. From a countywide perspective, we got to find somebody that was kind of like an O'Brien when he ran for Cook County State's attorney, right? He did really well in the suburbs. He beat, Kim Fox in the suburbs, but he got crushed in the city. So we can't just look at suburban Cook and think that we can get a candidate out of here to win. We have to get input from the city because that's where they're running up the score. So if we could find a great suburban mom, somebody that is a very social moderate, that has a very good resume. I mean, certainly with Slater, certainly we'd get the petitions and the signatures for her, but we got to find him or her, whoever it is, somebody that we get excited about and that can fundraise, because that's a minimum $1 million race just getting started. If the Dems see that we're polling within 3 or 4 percentage points, Tony Preckwinkle is going to start dumping more and more money in that race. So it's not just where you start, it's where you're going to be able to truly finish.
Aaron, I know you've got very serious thoughts as to what the next steps are for our departed Karen Yarborough. Any thoughts on that?
Oh my God, it's too early for that. I had a bad joke. It was so bad, but it's so funny. I'm like, people are like, well, do you want to comment on the Karen Yarborough passing? And I'm like, no, I don't. Chris says I shouldn't do it. I mean, we'll get a quote from her next year after she votes.
There you go. At least there's a little bit. We'll see if Aaron grows some cojones by the end of this episode.
Oh God, I'm never getting elected anything ever again.
Can I say one more political angle on Yarborough's passing and we can move on, Collin?
Go for it, fast.
Okay, so Karen Yarborough and Chris Welch are in a blood feud going back decades. Like, this is pretty well known in politics. So now that Karen's recently deceased, unfortunately, this just gives Chris Welch another opening to move into Proviso Township. I have no doubt in my mind that either Chris Welch himself or one of his cronies will be the next Democratic committeeman of Proviso Township. So this is another, I always got to go back to Chris Welch. But this is another dynamic that comes out of her passing, is that Welch gets more political power now at the county party as opposed to just the Springfield.
Well, I'll never complain when incompetent Democrats take even more control, because it just gives us opportunities. So fine by me. Speaking of incompetent Democrats, incompetent,
sorry, I was just going to say
you're killing me, Smalls. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying what Chris was right. Welch wants that area in Proviso. Him and Hastings hang out all the time. They're both all about beating on women and their girlfriends. If you look back at Hastings' original record, they should start their own little club, the Democrats for Wife Battering of Chicago or the greater Chicago area.
Yeah, they could. Their logo could be air quotes with allegedly. All right, let's go. So speaking of incompetent Democrats, Brandon Johnson, I was really excited to see this, that after his overwhelming loss of a referendum that never should have lost in the city of Chicago, the Bring Chicago Home referendum, never, ever, ever should have lost. A horrible effort on the side of Johnson and his allies, and a repudiation of him and his agenda. And yet Johnson came out and defiantly said, I'm going to keep being me. I'm going to keep doing what I do. You look at, by contrast, even the Progressive Caucus, the city council's Progressive Caucus said, hey, listen, we heard you. They showed some humility. They said, listen, we heard you, voters. We're going to do better. But not Brandon Johnson. He said he's going to push even stronger for his agenda. And if you're a Republican or a conservative anywhere near the city of Chicago, that is music to your ears, because the failures of Brandon Johnson and his far left progressive agenda only show a more stark contrast with our more common sense agenda. So I'm excited to see that Brandon Johnson has taken this giant loss in stride, and he's going to be even more Brandon Johnson for the next 3 years. I say, you go, guy. I love it. Keep doing it.
Brandon Johnson is a gift to Republicans all over the state, and pretty soon, as soon as people start listening all over the country, he ran on this whole position that he is going to be this huge African American leader, and he's going to be pushing through all this social justice campaigns. Which, if you think about it, almost every elected official in Illinois and or Chicago that touches Chicago is African American. The mayor is African American. The state's attorney is African American. The attorney general of Illinois is African American. The lieutenant governor of Illinois is African American. The chief of police is African American. The chief of the fire department is African American. Right? This whole social justice. But then he goes and is trying to get the rest of the Chicago City Council to give $70 million that they just found to migrants when you have your whole group of African Americans that have been in Chicago for decades or generations and haven't been underserved. And he's concentrating on all these immigrants and all this money. He already allocated $150 million already, plus another 70 that he wants. He knows the real number is 320 million, and he's abandoning his own people. They are, why do you think his approval rating across the city of Chicago, not just in some of the more conservative areas, is 28%? He is underperforming against Biden. You know what I mean? 28%.
He's underperforming
now. Right. And let him get another $70 million for people that just got here versus his own people that have elected him. I mean, thank you for imploding on everybody. It's crazy.
I gotta correct you a little bit here, Aaron. This isn't just like the ballots at the City Board of Elections. I didn't just find this $70 million. This is back to that whole sit down that Pritzker, Preckwinkle, and Johnson had like a month ago, where Johnson said, "Oh yeah, I'll pitch in 70 million," and like 3 days later, it was like, "I never said that. You go get your own 70 million," which is a great way to do business with people like Tony Preckwinkle. I'll tell you that. But seriously, I mean, this is a guy who has no idea what the hell he's doing. You have my favorite progressive alderwoman. I mean that very, very seriously. Jeanette Taylor had an interview this week where she openly said that Lori Lightfoot may run against Johnson in 2027 and beat him in 2027 because of how bad things are going in the city of Chicago. And this is a progressive Chicago alderman aligned with Brandon Johnson's agenda, saying this guy is doing so poorly, we are going to lose every election from here on out to Lori Lightfoot. So that's how bad things are getting.
Well, think about this. They were going to change this bring Chicago home or whatever to end homelessness was supposed to raise about $100 million. This dude just found 70 million. He found 70% of it that he's got to give to immigration, new immigrants that are coming in, right? So you had the money already. Right? It's not you're trying to raise it.
Let me put us on a different track here, because I think I want to get Michael and Kyle's thoughts on something I'm about to say. Aaron, you mentioned Lieutenant Governor. To me, the person who thinks that it has to assume this is the worst news possible has to be, and no one's talked about this, is Juliana Stratton. Because as people start asking Pritzker, what's your plan? What's your plan? What's your plan? We've all talked about it, about how they've been elevating Stratton, because clearly the goal is to run her for governor, whether it's next time or the time after. She's been groomed for that role. And the untold story here is that over the last year and a half, Illinois Policy Institute and some of these groups have made the Chicago Teachers Union enemy number one. It's been a concerted effort. This is obvious if you look at it, that this has been a concerted effort to make CTU the boogeyman, make them the problem in Chicago. That's been the focus. And Johnson coming out of CTU, Stratton came straight out of CTU. I mean, the more that this works, the more Johnson is polling horribly, the more CTU polls horribly. That only makes Democrats statewide in a really, really difficult position, because Stratton is straight out of CTU. She is their candidate. And if she is indeed the heir apparent to J.B. Pritzker, all that we're talking about with Brandon Johnson and CTU has got to be horrible news for Democrats statewide. Curious, Kyle or Michael, what do you guys think about that?
Well, CTU pours a lot of money into these races, I mean, they bankroll a lot of these campaigns. So if we can kind of continue to beat that drum and make them kind of a toxic entity, I mean, that's going to, reverberate across the entire state and have a real impact. If we can send out mail saying, this person's campaign is bankrolled by them, I mean, it opens up a lot of opportunities, I think. And, maybe even get some folks to say, hey, maybe I don't want that check, which kind of helps even the playing field on the financial side a little bit too, which we desperately need as Republicans in this state.
I mean, who do the Democrats have? I mean, Kyle, I'd ask you, I know there's a lot of talk now about who runs for governor for Republicans in 2 years, and I'm not ready for that conversation. But look at the Democrat side. If it's not J.B. Pritzker, I mean, if it's not Juliana, if she could be weakened enough that she can't be that candidate, then who do Democrats have? You've got Frericks, who nobody likes. You've got Mendoza, who's already lost multiple elections. You've got Who else do you have there? You got Janulius, who clearly wants it, but he's also lost statewide. I mean, Stratton's probably their best option for governor, and if you can weaken her before her name's even on the ballot, you're playing a pretty smart political
How about
game.
Kwame Warul? You know what I mean? The Attorney General.
Yeah.
You're going to find somebody
He
there.
wants national. He doesn't want
Listen,
state.
here's
He
the
wants
deal.
DC.
And I wouldn't discount Janulius because he's got big bucks, right? The rest of these guys are
But,
scraping nickels together to try to get,
Yeah.
campaign going.
Kyle,
Right?
just
He can
curious
self-fund.
You're curious your thoughts, Kyle.
No, I was just gonna say I think we can pretty much compete with anybody as long as they don't have Pritzker money behind them. Janulius
That's
is
a
one of
big
the
if.
only. He doesn't have Pritzker money, but he's got a lot of money. He could do something with it. And I don't know how much would the CTU put behind a statewide candidate.
Here's the other thing you forget about. What if Raja decides he wants to be a governor instead of running for Senate if Durbin doesn't go past? He's sitting on $15 million.
Yeah,
We
but
can't
how
move
much-
that much.
15 million as of the last 3 primaries. That's barely anything.
Yeah, and that's hard money. No one will take hard money and dump it into a state race. He's federal all the way. Though you're right, there's other candidates who will put their names up, but I just think the weaker that Johnson is, the more that any other of these politicians that are backed by, especially the Chicago Teachers Union. Obviously we've talked about how statewide there are many other teachers groups and teachers unions that are more favorable to maybe a little bit more of a common sense position. But CTU is the furthest left group out there. And when you see Johnson and them looking bad in the city of Chicago, that's not a horrible thing for Republicans and conservatives.
Well, I think you saw this week a reporter, I don't even remember with what outlet, but they asked JB Pritzker kind of, what are your plans for 2026? Are you planning on running for re-election? And he wouldn't answer one way or the other. So I think there's kind of a little bit of a question mark there. Pritzker's kind of weighing his options and trying to make a decision on what he does next. And I'd imagine that, all these names that we mentioned, whether they have a path or not, I'm sure a lot of them are interested in running for governor. And if we have, a huge primary on the Democratic side for governor, and a lot of these statewide office holders kind of vacate their positions to attempt to run for that, then, that creates openings elsewhere. And maybe we can be competitive in a treasurer's race or a secretary of state race if a lot of these people, decide to take a gamble.
That's unfortunate that the bar is to where we are not going to win these seats. We're just going to be competitive in them. I know you didn't actually mean that, Butler, but sure. I know you meant win them. I know you think we can win them.
Well, I just think I have sympathy for Christian Morthy because that guy wants to run for Senate. He's got say $14 million, but I mean Pritzker can write a check for $20 million tomorrow and he wouldn't even blink.
And that's the crazy thing. I mean, Raja, the poor guy. We've talked about this before. Like, if there's ever been a bigger indicator that specific demographics are being left behind by Democrats. If you're not a white suburban woman or you're not an African American, the Democratic Party is not for you. I mean, if you're Hispanic, the party left you a long time ago. If you're Indian, if you're Asian, the party left you a long time ago. Someone like Raja has been trying to get a position for as long as I've been involved in politics. And unless he ran for it himself and made it happen himself, the party has never opened up their doors and supported him. He is not going to be on the short list to be Durbin's replacement because they've never treated Raja in that way. And so it's just yet another indicator that if you're, even the Indian community, we've run a lot of campaigns in the Indian community in the suburbs over the last 5 or 6 years, and they're starting to recognize that the Democratic Party does not represent their interests. And I think Raja is another example of that. All right, let's move to the next topic, especially with a member of the State Central Committee here. We got to talk about this. The state convention's in a couple months, less than 2 months now at this point, down in Butlerville, down there in Collinsville. And Republicans are going to be electing or selecting a new national committeeman and a new national committee woman. A lot of people don't realize this. So the current 2 people in those roles are term limited out. So Richard Porter is no longer going to be our national committee person or committeeman. And on the committee woman side, we're going to be losing Demetra DeMonte. So 2 people have been in those roles for a bit. So from what I've heard, there's multiple candidates looking at each position. I don't know what's the official process here and if more people might throw their names in a hat, but let me start with you, Aaron, on what are you hearing about this? And it sounds like, I know there's some groups out there, some publications who are trying to make this into a big controversy. So it's going to be kind of interesting.
Well, I'm excited to come down and see Michael Butler on his home turf in Collinsville in the end of May over there. I'm actually a member of the State Central Committee, and I'm on the committee to appoint the next national committeeman and committeewoman. what's going to happen is each state central committeeman, there's 17 of us, one from each congressional district in Illinois, we're each going to appoint a committee member or serve in that committee as ourselves. That committee will be done by one vote, one person. It's not going to be done by weighted vote. One of the ways that we've done things in other elections, it's all based on one human, one vote. There's three names that have surfaced already. One is Dean White. He's also a member of the State Central Committee representing the 8th District out of Kane County. He is a very strong businessman, very well heeled as far as having the acumen of building a company and scaling it nationwide. So he brings a lot of experience there. We also have a member of the State Central Committee, Mark Shaw, who's out of the 10th Congressional, living on Upper Lake County, formerly served as the Lake County chairman until 2 years ago. So he was also a candidate for state representative a couple years back. So he's running as well. And then there's also Vince Culver. He ran for Congress in the 3rd. He's been a major donor to the party for many, many years. A huge donor to Rauner originally, then to Jeannie Ives in that rotation. He has submitted his name. It's going to be a battle right now. People are calling each other. People are starting to lean, and I think it's going to get tighter and tighter as people go. It's only those 17 people and their committee appointees that get to vote in this race. So people are like, oh, I have my own logo and I have my own lawn sign. Regular people can't vote for you. So that's cool. I've been seeing that on Facebook and Instagram, and I'm like, that's hilarious. Like, I've been endorsed by, this group or that group. And I'm like, great, they don't get to vote for you. So, but the non-fun part is when they start emailing people like myself and the rest of my colleagues and saying, we want this person. And if you don't vote for this person, that we're going to light you on fire, which is always warming to my heart. It makes me feel good about what I do for free. And, when people critique the way that I volunteer, it's just an amazing feeling. But I think ultimately it's going to have to get figured out. I mean, Richard Porter has been an incredibly generous national committeeman. He's done a great job of bringing other candidates and elected officials from all over the country to Illinois, doing fundraisers. He brought DeSantis. He's brought, Trump several times. He's brought other people through to help local organizations, county organizations, and township organizations become really successful. So I think that's going to be a hard challenge to be able to do what Richard did. And Dimitri, the same thing. She served as the RNC chair. I'm not chair, as secretary for many years in that race. There's a couple names that have been dropped. Jeannie Ives has been making some phone calls. She's a member of the State Central Committee. Rhonda Belfort has had some ideas about running. She's not made a decision yet, but she would be a very strong candidate in that race. And then Joan Lassonde, who represents the 9th District, also in the State Central Committee, has shown interest in making phone calls. So all three of those members are on the State Central Committee for the female side. That one's going to be a lot harder because nobody really wants to hurt a lot of friends. On the male side, it's a little bit more decisive. Most people kind of know where they're going to go already. While I am still undecided, no matter what anybody says, I've yet to pick my horse in either of the races. You can stop calling and emailing me. I'll figure it out when I get to it. But it's an important position. It's that person that's going to represent us on the national level of the RNC, and we need to do a good job and vet all of our candidates and come to a consensus candidate.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of, obviously different dynamics here, different regions, and we're 6 weeks out, so a lot can change between now and the actual convention. I think some people are kind of put, like Aaron kind of alluded to, there are some people that have kind of put the cart before the horse a little bit. And it's like, well, first of all, the application hasn't even been released yet. Like, you've got to apply. You've got to kind of be vetted by the committee. I mean, there's a lot of steps in this process that have yet to happen. So I think, the names that we hear now may not even be the final names that the committee's voting on. So it's kind of like, cool your jets a little bit. Let's see how this plays out.
Michael, it drives me crazy. Like you look at Republican primaries, this always drives me nuts because it's like a candidate will announce a year before the election, and they'll start calling around to local Republican leaders, and those Republican leaders will be like, sure, I'll endorse you. It's like the primary's up for a year, and then an actual good candidate 6 months later announces, and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I already committed. And it was like, hey, maybe why didn't you wait till you knew all the candidates before just like getting into bed with the first person who asks you to take your pants off? Like, come on, can we at least take a break here and evaluate the candidates?
Mike brings up a really great point because Dean White was just endorsed by Charlie Kirk and Turning Point, and applications have not even gone out yet, right? So I saw that out, and I like Charlie. Charlie was, Collin, we grew up with Charlie, right? I remember Charlie when he was short and fat living in Wheeling, right? And, but, right, your endorsement, like, you're in Florida, man. right? I don't know any member of the State Central Committee that's in Turning Point. And I mean, it's a great organization, don't get me wrong, but
well, and
okay.
I don't know if I'd be touting an endorsement from somebody who says that contraceptives screw up female brains. I mean, Charlie Kirk has gone off the deep end way too many times for that to be an endorsement I'd be touting, but that's just me. All right, let's move to the next topic here. And I believe our sixth person, if they're ready, Lane, you can drop them in whenever you're able to get them ready, and I'll introduce them. But let's talk about some political topics here in the state of Illinois. And some policy topics, basically. So I don't know if you guys saw this, but in the last week, Illinois essentially became number one in property taxes. So we were number two for the longest time, and now, congratulations, guys, we're number one. We beat New Jersey. It's always great to be number one in something, and maybe not quite this category, but congratulations to all of us. And I know it's something we're all excited to see, that, you know, when the cost of living is such a giant problem in this state, that when we see that cost continues to get worse. While I was out, Illinois was named the least tax-friendly state in the country. Chris mentioned some polling from before. Polling said that the cost of living is the number one issue in the state at a whopping 49%, who say that that's the single most important problem facing their household. Next on the list was just 8%. Cost of living is the issue in this election, and when you can see that taxes are one piece of that, our property taxes just keep going up. If Republicans can capitalize on this, we can win. But I caution Republicans. We've said this 10 different times at least on these podcasts. It's not taxes, it's cost of living. You see, taxes are one piece of this. But when you ask, are you concerned about taxes? It's oftentimes 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th on the list. It's cost of living that is number one. So don't get stuck in that trap of having to talk taxes, because people don't resonate with that with the voters. It's cost of living. With that, I'll say hello to Nathan Hoffman, who's joined us. Nathan, I know your previous call went long, so thank you for being able to jump on at the end. He's the the senior director of state policy and advocacy for the Foundation for Excellence in Education. Nathan, thanks for joining us. I'm going to put you right in the hot seat. Illinois, number one now in property taxes in the country. Are you excited to be number one?
Always excited to be number one, especially the things we shouldn't be number one in. So,
yeah. I mean, it's nice to win, you know?
Right.
Anyone have thoughts on cost of living or property taxes in general?
You know, I think I know what finally put us over the top here, Collin, and that's Fitzcagey. Because there was another article out this week that some people's property tax assessments are going up like 615% since the last assessment. So it's like insane.
Yeah. These people, and Cook County residents are, especially people who own residential properties and or commercial properties, we're real big fans of Fitzcagey. And
the interview, the person who did the story reached out to Kagi himself and it's like, hey, what's up with this? This guy's property taxes went up 600%. He's like, oh yeah, I screwed up. We're gonna fix it. And it's like okay, here's 12 other people who also went up there. Like, oh yeah, we screwed up. Like, all right, buddy. Like, did you screw up all these? Like, everybody's just going up 300, 600%. Like, this is terrible. So here's the thing. I'm gonna go 2026. I've been saying this for a while. I think the one person Republicans might be able to beat in this damn county might be Fritz freaking Kagi, because nobody likes the guy. So we'll look at that. But I think it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly something we're going to be keeping an eye on. Cost of living is a big issue for the voters right now. And if you're a Republican campaign trying to win in November, cost of living better be your number one issue. Again, don't fall prey to that sort of Republican fallback of taxes. Even though we highlighted taxes here, yes, taxes are a big thing. But when you just ask about individual issues, taxes is never in the top right now in this state. Voter to voters, it's a bigger picture. It's cost of living. It's a larger thing here of it's too damn expensive to afford to live if you live in the state of Illinois, especially in the suburbs, but anywhere in the state, it's too damn expensive. And that's what voters are telling us. And that's what you better be talking about if you want to win in November.
And it's an issue that the Democrats in Springfield, I mean, they're not even talking about it, attempting to address it. They're more focused on, banning kangaroo ownership and banning Skittles and, I mean, legalizing fentanyl. Like, they're just so whacked out. It's not even funny.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think Don DeWitt, Illinois Republican state senator, did a pretty good thing here, focusing on look at how much money, and the Senate Republicans have been doing this a lot. They've been doing it very well. Look at how much money we're spending on non-citizens of this state. Meanwhile, the citizens of this state, their backs are breaking at the cost of trying to live here. That's a pretty good distinction, and frankly, one that works not just with swing voters. It works with Black wards. It works with lower income communities. When you see that the state of Illinois is not doing anything to support those with mental health needs. I thought Sharon Johnson did a great job talking about this last week. Jason Plummer did a great job talking about this on last week's SFR, that if we're going to spend all this money on non-citizens, meanwhile, our citizens are struggling because we're not doing enough to help them. I think that puts Republicans in a great spot if we can drive that wedge, but we've got to do it, and we got to do it by November if we're going to win.
Yep.
All right, well, Nathan, you're here, so let's jump ahead of the agenda since we're running low on time. I want to ask you about school choice. My company does a lot of polling across the country, and school choice has seen a significant number of successes around the country, but in Illinois, it seems to be going backwards. You've got the city of Chicago doing everything they can to basically shut down any schools that aren't simply public schools, pulling away funding from those magnet schools and those sort of non-public schools, or however you want to term that. You're seeing Invest in Kids yanked away, a lot of those scholarships yanked away. So in a country that's doing more to embrace this choice in education and this investing in our kids, you're seeing not really the same thing happen in this state. So Nathan, what's going on in Illinois? How is that different than what you're seeing in the rest of the country?
Yeah, well, I think thanks, Collin, and I think it's entirely different. Everywhere else across the country, school choice is kind of steamrolling. Well, maybe with the exception of Texas, but we hope that with some electoral wins this year, Texas will be able to get a school choice program next year as well. But by and large, states are moving forward, not just with passing school choice programs, but making them available to every kid in the state. So the fastest growing school choice program in the country today is a universal school choice program. 2 or 3 years ago, there were maybe 1 or 2 states that had universal programs. Coming into this year, there's now 13 states that have universal school choice programs, and Louisiana is on tap to pass one coming up. So it's only growing, but what we're seeing in Illinois is the opposite. There's a retreat. Despite, you mentioned polling, these choice programs poll above 60% across the board. Black voters, 71% of Black voters in Illinois support the issue at least in a poll that I was part of. Latino voters are even higher, approaching 80%. These are programs that are not only benefiting minority and low-income communities, but they're programs that are wanted by these communities. However, their elected representatives have essentially said, nope, we'd rather take the CTU, and I assume we can talk brass tacks here, but we'd rather take the CTU money and just do nothing, kind of sit on our hands. That's what JB did as well last year. He said, hey, I'll sign a bill if it gets to my desk. Mm-hmm. Well, that doesn't mean anything. This is a guy who's a popular governor, generally speaking, maybe not on this podcast or with this viewership, but more broadly across the state, he's a popular governor. He's a billionaire governor. He doesn't need the CTU. So the fact that he sort of sat on his hands, did nothing, wherein virtually every other part of Illinois policy where he wants to do something, he very much engages and kind of dictates what he wants to see. He sat on his hands here, and unfortunately, the first Black Speaker of the House of Representatives, who sends his own child to a private school that participates in the tax credit scholarship program, didn't think that this was a program worth saving, and so he didn't save it, and neither did really anybody else in the General Assembly, which is a shame. It's 15,000 families who are now forced to figure out what they're going to do heading into next year with their kids. So it's a shame.
Well, and the rank hypocrisy is what drives me crazy. Anyone who's watched these SFRs knows that whether it's a Republican or Democrat, if you're a hypocrite, I'm going to call you out. And you see that from Pritzker, who sends his kids to the school of his choice. You mentioned Welsh, Stacey Davis Gates. Yeah. These people are people who have the means and the ability to send their kids to whatever school they want, and they're not sending them to public schools. And yet they tell those minority families, those low-income families who need those opportunities, you don't get to have the same opportunity. And I don't understand that hypocrisy, nor do I understand why this has to be an either-or situation. I'm a Republican, and I believe in education. It's one of my top issues. I work with teachers unions throughout the state to improve education in this state. I take a lot of crap for it from Republicans, but I believe in education in this state, and I'm willing to work with both sides to make those investments and to improve education. School choice is not that situation where it's saying it's an either-or, where we want to shut down public schools. It's how do we do this in a way that makes it best for kids, that invests in our teachers and invests in in our schools, and let's educate our kids and give them the best opportunities for that future. That's what we believe in when we say school choice. I don't understand why there's this belief that it has to be either or, that you hate teachers and you hate schools if you ever even utter the words school choice. It's a failure of how we've presented this, I think, maybe in the state. I don't understand, what else it is. Nathan, am I on the wrong track here or what?
No, I mean, it is. I would say it's, maybe, yeah, we haven't done a good enough job messaging this, but I look at it from, I actually think that the framework that Illinois initially passed the program in 2017 was directly attached to historic funding reform for the public schools. So all of the arguments that this is taking away money from public schools holds zero merit in my mind in the state of Illinois, because this program has raised maybe $350 million over the last 6 years, which is a good amount of money, to support students. But at that same time, public schools have seen new investment of state money of more than $1.5 billion. So you can do two things at once. And, I just don't buy the argument that doing both at the same time, shortchanges the other.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, this idea that we shouldn't just be backing up to the buffet. And I know the Pritzker joke there is too easy, so I'm going to leave it alone. But why shouldn't just settle at the buffet and say, you know what, whatever it takes to educate kids, whatever it takes to improve these numbers, because right now we are seeing some scary numbers from the educational system in this state. And yes, I know our standards are higher, blah, 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 but I don't care whether our standards are higher or lower. Those numbers should not be considered acceptable, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. We should be doing whatever it takes. And that means if it's investments here, 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 and here, I don't care. It should be an all of the above approach, not this sort of only my approach and not yours. If you care about education in the state, you should have a seat at the table. But it's, unless you're part of our select group, and as you said, unless you're, in line with CTU, you don't get a seat at this table to talk about how you care about our kids and you want to educate them. And as a result, we seem to be circling the drain on a political agenda rather than actually an agenda that says, screw politics, let's do what's right for kids.
Yeah. I mean, when was the last time when was the last time the CTU came to Springfield and said, hey, guess what? We know how we can solve literacy. We know how we can, get more kids who can do math on grade level to actually solve the problems that they're responsible for, without saying, oh, and by the way, it's going to cost, taxpayers an arm and a leg to do. They've never done it. It's not an interest to them.
The CTU always says that, the education in Chicago is all racist, right? And it's biased against underprivileged. And what I would say to them is that I lived in Chicago when I was a little kid, and my parents, they moved us to Palatine when I was getting ready to go into like junior high and high school. And why did we move to Palatine? Because it's this cornucopia of wonderfulness and it's the greatest place. That's great. I love it. I mean, I moved here. I love Palatine. Don't get me wrong. They brought me out here, and they, like everybody else's family in Palatine, Hoffman Estates, Lake Zurich, Schaumburg, everywhere, because of the schools. Because they wanted me to be able to read. Yeah. Right? And when you take away the school choice in the city of Chicago, I started saying, you're the one that's creating this environment. Because my parents were in a situation, because they were professionals, that we could leave Chicago, move to the burbs, and buy a bigger house and pay the property taxes, right? So our kid could get an education, our kid could be able to read and write and get into a good college and then succeed in life. Well, that's what you're doing. You're creating a situation where people are like, look, we're not getting what we want here in Chicago, so we're going to pick up all of our stuff and we're going to leave. And then whatever's left is all you have, right? So our tax base is now gone. Then you replace me with who? Right. And then it continues and continues and continues. You do this for a decade or two, and then that's what you get. Right. And then what do you think? We pay our teachers $120 grand a year out here. So what do you think the TTU teachers are doing? They're moving to Palatine to become teachers.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the thing. You vote with your feet, right? I mean, people are coming to these suburban areas, and we work with a lot of these school districts, and the work they're doing. There's a few districts, I don't want to call them out in case they're uncomfortable being called out in a political podcast, but some of these school districts where they're reducing costs and yet at the same time improving their education numbers, their test scores by tremendous amounts. I mean, you've got some of these suburban school districts are doing some innovative things that, that's why these people are rushing to those districts, to move into those districts. When you see success breeds success. And why wouldn't we say, you're doing something right? Why don't we emulate this in some other areas and some other districts? I mean, again, if the goal is to educate kids, not win elections or hold political power, if the goal is to educate kids, then that is the only thing that should matter.
Well, here's the last thing I'll hit on this, and I'm sorry, to take up your time on this, but here's the deal. In District 15, the largest K through 8 district in Illinois, they spend roughly about $32,000 per student, right? In Palatine, it's that area, also, the Northwest Suburban area. CPS spends about $29,900. It's not that much of a difference. It's not that $800, $900, $1,000 is making that big of a difference. So to say that it's the dollar amount, how much we're spending per child, no, it's the way that you're applying those $29,900 to the children's education, and what is the result in the product that you're getting out of it. When you have a school that's got some costs that's at 30% occupancy, but you don't want to close it, right? But then you're going to shut down charter schools. You're using that dollars inefficiently. That's where the problem is, like. It's not on the cost per student. It's the way you're allocating that cost per student.
And honestly, that's what we've seen. I mean, so the untold story of what we do is we work with districts that we know are being responsible with the public's tax dollars, and we are very picky about which districts we work with. And you look at these districts, and they're spending way less than the state average on administration. Their operating costs are way less than the state average. It's possible, and that's why we gravitate to working with these districts. And yes, sometimes we'll say, hey, listen, look at how great your district is doing. Are you willing to say, hey, let's put a little work here and fix up some of these buildings? And most of the time those voters say absolutely, because they respect my tax dollars, unlike maybe the city of Chicago and CTU or CPS. So it can be done, and I think there more should be done to celebrate the great work that's being done. I think there was a lot of hope that Sanders, coming out of that sort of suburban school district mentality when he was elevated to be the state superintendent, that he'd sort of bring that same level of, hey, listen, we can do this. We've seen successes. Unfortunately, it seems like he's kind of taken the same political bent as his patron J.B. Pritzker, but there was an opportunity here to say we can do this better, and unfortunately it just hasn't happened. All right, let's move on to our next topic. We're missing some things in the agenda just because we're already over time and our agenda was packed. It's my first week back. Of course, I had like 50 things I wanted to talk about, but one of the biggest issues you're going to hear out of Springfield for the next month and a half as session winds down is this tipped minimum wage increase push in Springfield that frankly is going to cripple the state's restaurant industry if it happens. And so let's talk about it now, because we're going to probably talk about it 3 or 4 times between now and the end of May. But this is a big push. When Chicago passed this, you saw the 2 days after the primary, you saw One Fair Wage coming out down in Springfield, pushing with a big rally to push this now down in Springfield. The same thing that passed up or that happened up in Chicago to make that fair wage a thing, which always drives me crazy, right? It's all about messaging, but I kind of laugh about that whole fair wage concept, because when you look, you see that tip workers actually make an average of about $27 an hour. So tip workers are actually not being paid below the minimum wage, but nobody wants to talk about the reality of the facts on this issue. So anyways, I'm getting a little bit in the minutia, but this is going to be a big fight down in Springfield. But all I'll say on this before I open it up is when even the Chicago Sun-Times comes out with an editorial and says, maybe not. Maybe it's too soon. When the Sun-Times tells you that they're not even on board with this issue, that'll tell you that maybe it's just not a big issue, a good issue to push. Meanwhile, the committee down in Springfield said, let's push it to the floor. Nobody told this story, but Welsh actually had to change out a bunch of people in the committee just to get this thing forced to be onto the floor, because it wasn't even going to pass out of committee. So there's some shenanigans already behind this bill. We'll see what happens down in Springfield, but this is not a good thing for those mom and pop restaurants. It isn't even a good thing for any restaurants. But if you're a restaurant owner in this state, if you're a small business owner in this state, you got to be looking at your wallet really nervous for what might happen down in Springfield between now and the end of May. What are you guys hearing? What do you guys think about this, or frankly, anything that's passing in Springfield nowadays?
Well, I think you're blowing it out of proportion, Colin. I mean, what's the big deal about having a $45 small cheese pizza, right? I mean, that's what it's going to be like if they get this thing passed.
When was the last time you ordered a small cheese pizza, Delmar?
Right. You're going to get a cheese pizza that's going to be about that big, right? And it's going to be $45 when you have to pay the minimum wage for the chef in the back, the cook, the caterer to bring it out. And then they're going to want you to tip 25% on top of it, or you're a bad human. Right.
Well,
or they're going to give you that. They're going to start browbeating.
This is the trade-off I'm saying. Like, okay, you know what? Trade, we're going to outlaw tipping in this state, but we'll put the minimum wage in place. Like, all right. I mean, I hate tips. Like nowadays, they bring your food out from the front door to your car, and they hand you a thing to sign that they want a 20% tip. Like, tipping culture is out of control. But that's not what they're doing. They're looking to raise those wages even further, when with tips, people are averaging $27 an hour, and that's a nationwide average. In a state like Illinois that's well-to-do, I guarantee you the average is higher than $27.
No, and I think you're right on this one, Colin, that it would be a lot simpler because I'm personally the belief that we should get rid of tipping and just pay servers a living wage. I think it would be a lot easier and actually would probably save a lot of people money in the long run. But one of the reasons why one of the best arguments for this bill, I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second, is because Chicago made the decision to pass this bill. Ordinance, as it were, my apologies. It's going to create a disproportionate job market in Cook County because if you live in a town like,
I'm so sorry for them. You
no,
passed a bad policy, so we all gotta pay because you passed a bad policy.
He's 100% right. When the city of Chicago shut down everything for COVID, everybody came in Schaumburg and Palatine and everywhere else. So when your prices go up in Chicago, they're going to drive it out to the suburban areas, south,
but
northwest,
if you're a worker, if you're a laborer in Cook County, and you could be a waitress at a place in Cicero and get paid X amount of money plus tips, or you could go and work in a little village and make X amount of money plus tips. That's a disproportion. You'd rather go work in a place like Little Village because you make more money off the minimum wage, and that's what Lisa Hernandez and Cicero Town President Larry Dominick's argument here is. Right. Is that they're not going to have anybody working in Cicero if they end up getting paid more.
Chris, let me ask you this: Does anybody in Cicero actually not work for government? I mean, Dominick is the number one.
So true, Colin. So true. You're 100% right, and I have no response to that argument. Even the restaurants, I'm sure, are run by the town of Cicero, and also the mob probably. But don't ask questions. But irregardless, that's the main argument here, and that's why this even passed out of committee, because a lot of these committee members only voted for it because Lisa called these people up and be like, hey, I'm the chairman of the state Democratic Party, buddy. I want this to go through. You want a problem? No? Okay, you're going to vote for this out of committee. And that's the Cicero that's in Lisa Hernandez and nobody wants to talk about. But that's what the argument here is. I don't know if this is going to go anywhere. I mean, I could easily see this being a loss for these people down in Springfield. I mean, I think this could be a really, really tough sell. And if it actually ends up getting through, I mean, I don't know how this is going to go.
Well, I mean, there's a movement to beat this, and
I would just say that on this
one. The IllinoisRestaurants.org, protect Illinois hospitality. They've got ads everywhere. They're doing videos. They're getting PR. I mean, they've mounted a campaign to beat this thing, and it's frankly, from what I've seen, has been pretty strong and pretty impressive. So I don't know. If they keep doing what they're doing, I don't know how they could ever have Springfield could ever get away with passing this thing, but we'll see.
No, here's who's going to get taken in the teeth is going to be people like Mike and Kyle, right? Because we're in Schaumburg, Palatine, city of Chicago. We're used to paying, $20 for soon to be $45 pizza, right? When I love going to Southern Illinois for Lincoln Day dinners, because when I go get a beer, it's $2.50. Right. It's not $17, right? Yep. But now you guys are going to start getting a taste of what it's like for Chicago prices down in Collinsville, right, over in Springfield and in Peoria and everywhere else, because you're going to be paying that minimum wage on top of the tip service. This is not going to just infect Chicago. They want to bring the infection across all 102 counties and give it to everybody in the state.
Well, I was just going to say, this is kind of like anecdotal, but my family owns a pizza restaurant in Hamilton County. And obviously, people get tips, for waiting tables or whatever. But, the minimum wage goes up. So then the price of the food goes up. So then people get their bill and they say, oh, well, this cost me a lot more than I expected. I'm going to tip less than I normally would have because my large pizza was $20 when it used to be, $16.50. So they think that they're like, it's just like typical Springfield, typical Democrat politicians. They think they're doing somebody a favor when really they're screwing them over, because when this all washes out, they're probably going to end up getting, $2-3 less per hour on that average because people are paying $3-4 more for their pizza. So they're going to be worse off. They're just not smart enough to understand.
Well, not only that, what they're going to do is they're going to tax you more on you're going to get more tax dollars, because before they're taxing you on $16.50. Now they're taxing you on $20. It's going right back to JB's coffers, right? It's a special plan. We're going to give you the greatest deal. We're going to give you half off, double this price right now here in Illinois.
Basically. I mean, when your best argument for your policy is we passed it in the city and it's so bad that no one wants to pay it, so please make everyone else follow this bad policy, you've got a bad policy. Yeah. Nathan, was that an American Eskimo behind you, or did I miss it? What type of dog?
Close. It's Samoyed.
Got it.
Closely
I
related.
grew up with American Eskimo, and I loved that
Yeah.
dog. So I thought that might be the little white poofy thing was behind you. It's cute.
I have
All
an
right.
orange cat. Doesn't have a brand or anything. Just an orange cat. Don't know why dog people have to have names for their dogs. Just dog.
No, nobody cares about your cat, Chris.
You should. He's awesome.
All right, two quick things. We're over time, but since we've had some great discussions, I'll bring two more things here. So first, let's talk about Michael or someone mentioned this, and forgive me, I don't remember who it was, that in Springfield, McCombie, the House Republican leader, brought this up, that last week, Democrats pretty much blocked nearly every Republican bill they were trying to put to the floor. So I should have looked this up. I meant to look this up. Chris, if you know offhand, or if you can look up for us while we're here, what was the percentage of votes that the last few Republican statewide candidates got in this state? Trump, Bailey, like what's our statewide Republican number, even on our worst performing numbers? Because when we look at the bills that Republicans were able to get through, when you look at the ones, just things that they could get hearings on, they only got 20% of the bills were Republican bills they got hearings. When you look at the ones that actually were able to get out of committee, you're looking at 15%. The ones that made it out of committee onto the floor, 11%. Like whatever, what's that percentage, Chris? What do you got for me?
So Trump got 40.55% in Illinois in 2020, and Darren Bailey got 42% for governor.
All right, so Republicans make up 40 to 42% in the state, maybe a little more because neither of those candidates were overly popular, but whatever. Let's say 40 to 42, and yet we're only getting 11% of the legislation to be heard in Springfield. I mean, you hear all the time, Pritzker and all these Democrats, oh, we're bipartisan, and oh, where's the Republican plan? Why aren't you coming out and trying to participate in this process? And Republicans are trying to participate in the process, but they're being blocked time after time after time to be able to have their bills even heard, let alone get a vote on, let alone get a hearing, let alone be, let the public see their bills. And so I've got a sort of a secondary take on this that I want to add in a second, but I'll just stop there. I mean, despite these claims of bipartisanship, Republicans are not given any sort of a voice down in Springfield.
That's 100% right. What do you expect? We're at the buffet of Illinois' financial buffet, and J.B. Pritzker and his Democrats are taking everything and not giving Republicans anything. That is usual and customary. He said that in the beginning. This shouldn't be a shock or surprise. He said that, right? Why are they going to reward bad behavior? The Republicans aren't falling in line and doing what the Democrats want. They're going to get nothing to get back. So when they go back and they try to compete with them on legislative races, even in ones that are competitive, you have no victories that they can point to.
I bet the Illinois Republicans are really missing Mike Madigan right now. Oh, how you guys bashed Mike Madigan for years. The Illinois Policy Institute with their stupid documentaries and all Rauner. Oh, Mike Madigan's the reason for all the problems in the state. You guys wish you had Mike Madigan right now because Chris Welch ain't giving you the time of day down in Springfield. But I'm sure the number was much higher on the Madigan. I guarantee it, in fact.
Well, Chris, listen, we only started recording these discussions about a year ago. You've been part of this. We've had this discussion usually on Fridays every week for years. And I said it, you can back me up. I said, politically, it's a great thing that Madigan's going to be gone because he's going to be replaced by progressives that are going to take the state further left, by leaders who are not going to give Republicans the time of day. We knew this was the path that this was going to go because Madigan was, at least as a leader, more of a governing Democrat. Meanwhile, a lot of the Democrats in control now in Chicago and in Springfield, they're progressive Democrats. They're far left in their agenda, and they have no interest in listening to conservative or Republican ideas. So here's my follow-up to this, and we'll see if anyone wants to sort of take this or if this topic will die quickly. But what I want to say is just kudos to conservatives and to Republicans, because what I've been saying for years, and we've finally seen this in the last year, is I know they keep you out. And when I first started in politics, a lot of the Republicans who were in were just exhausted because they just were so done fighting. They never got their bills heard. And so they just stopped filing bills. They said, it never gets heard. Why do I waste my time? And so for a long time, it kind of became the norm that Republicans just gave up and said, our bills aren't being heard. Why would I put in all that work to file a bill? And so for a long time, Republicans had stopped filing legislation. And over the last year, 2 years, there's been this movement amongst pro-business groups, amongst conservative groups, Republican legislators to say, you know what, we're going to put our ideas forward. They're going to be ignored. It's going to be a complete waste of time, but we're going to show our agenda of what Illinois could look like if we actually were given a seat at the table. And so I give kudos. First time, write it down. I'm going to give kudos to Tony McCombie and the Republican staff. I'm going to give kudos to these conservative groups, these pro-business groups, these manufacturing groups who have put forward an agenda, one that's been completely ignored by Democrats in Springfield. But kudos to them for saying this is what the state could look like if we actually had a common sense agenda down here. And I hope they don't get disheartened by the fact that only 11% of these bills are their bills that are actually being considered. Because you know what? Come back next year and the next year and the next year and do it again. Because at some point the dam will break. At some point people are going to realize that there is another agenda here. And yes, it's disheartening. It's exhausting. It's probably what drove Ozinga to say, I'm done with this. I get it. I understand this is not something you want to deal with, but keep at it because it will bear fruit if you have the gumption to stick with this.
Well, I always State Senator Terry Bryant, she always has this line that she says that whenever you're in the majority, you legislate, and whenever you're in the minority, you communicate. And one of the ways that we can communicate what our agenda is as Republicans is by filing these bills, drawing attention to them, and then also drawing attention to the terrible bills and the bad policy that the Democrats are putting forward. And if you think back over the course of the last year or so, we even being in the super minority in the Senate and in the House, we've had a lot of victories. Some of our members have been able to get some important legislation passed. I think Erica Harris has passed like at least 6 bills in the year and a half that she's been in the Senate, which is a huge deal. And then we've also been able to, stop appointments, derail some of these radical bills from the Democrats. Even with the small numbers that we have. And I think, there's hope this cycle that we'll pick up a couple of seats in the House and maybe have a little bit of a better margin there and see what we can do.
Well, and Michael, we had Amy on a couple of weeks ago. I mean, she's done some great work. I mean, we do have some great legislators down there, which is why I just say keep up the fight. Don't lose hope. Don't lose heart here. It's exhausting. It's mentally draining, and I get it. A lot of my friends. My Rolodex is full of former legislators. I completely understand, but we're never going to turn this around if we can't keep people down there for more than 5 minutes. Like we're going to need 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4. We can't get 1 down there. Work on number 2 while number 1 quits because he can't take it anymore. Like we need to start to build something here.
I think that one of our problems with like the burnout on our side is that it's a little different in Southern Illinois as opposed to, up your guys' direction. Is that the job description for a state rep and a state senator on the Republican side is different than the job description for a state rep or state senator on the Democrat side because they're in power. And if we can get some of those guys to kind of adopt the practices that people like, Terry Bryant, Dave Severin, Charlie Meyer, some of these great state reps and state senators from Southern Illinois, if we can get some of those suburban ones to kind of take that approach, I think we'll move the ball down the court a lot further. It's all about constituent services. It's about being in your district. It's about addressing issues that, your constituents have, whether it's with unemployment or any of these other agencies. There's a lot of things you can do as a state legislator, even being in the minority, that makes a difference.
Well, I'll give you a little pushback and say that there are some suburban ones up here that come to mind. Tom Weber, Jackie Haas, Craig Wilcox, John Curran. I mean, there's some great ones up here. The problem is, we're talking about a giant geographical area and a huge population, and we're a tiny little drop in that bucket, which is why it feels like there are none up here. But I can assure you there are some, just not nearly enough. But Who else has thoughts on this topic?
Well, I have been thinking about this mainly selfishly from the school choice perspective and looking at the Democratic Party nationally, but I also think it's true with the more radicals that come to power in the Democratic Party. There's a growing tension between the moderates. You look at like a Mike Gillespie and the guy that there's a tension there. And so I am maybe too optimistic in the belief that at some point there may be something, and it might be in the very near future, that Democrats in Springfield are going to need Republican support. It might not be a lot of Republican support, but it might be Republican support. And are we, Tony McCombie, John Curran, leadership going to be prepared with what is the Republican ask in exchange for votes to get something over the finish line that they might not otherwise be able to get over the finish line because of Democratic infighting. So I don't know. I don't know if the Republicans are well positioned or if there will be 50 things that everyone wants to fight over what the thing is. In my mind, it should be one or two things, and that's you want our support. That's how you got to get it. So.
Yeah. Well, let's jump to our final topic before I put everybody to sleep. You'll notice, by the way, that when I wasn't in the host chair, these episodes all stayed at 60 minutes like they're supposed to, and then I come back and we're back to 90 minutes again. So poor Lane. But as often happens, I tend to notice things that maybe some others don't on bills in Springfield that should get more notice. And I want to bring attention to House Bill 5380 because this is a bill that's sponsored by Jennifer Gong Gershowitz out of Glenview. And actually, one of her co-sponsors is Chris Welsh, and there's a number of others. Kwame Raoul supports this bill. But what's interesting to me is that a whole number of far-left groups have come out against this bill. Now, let me tell you what this bill does. So this bill would require large social media companies to basically help parents monitor their kids' behavior. So it alerts them when there are problems. Now, I'm not saying I love this bill or hate this bill. I'm not taking a stand on the bill itself, but this is basically a bill that helps empower parents to know what their kids are doing online, and especially notifying them if there's problems, suicidal thoughts or comments, anxiety, depression, if they are into pornography or violence or giving out information they shouldn't be giving out. There's something to be talked about here. And it's backed by a family who their son was cyberbullied and ended up committing suicide. A really awful, awful story of why this bill even came about. And these far left groups are coming out and they're saying, no, we're against this. Equality Illinois, Planned Parenthood, multiple Planned Parenthoods, ACLU, a number of these uber progressive groups have come out against it. And their reasoning is because, well, let me give you the real reason, which is they don't trust parents. That's the headline. What they say is it would out these children to unsupportive parents or guardians potentially, or maybe create unsafe home environments, or prevent kids from accessing information about abortion or their reproductive care if their parents don't want to let them do it. The headline is basically these groups. They're not saying it, but let me tell you what the missing subtext is here, which is they don't trust parents to raise their own kids. They want the state to do it. They want to do it themselves. They want the schools to do it, but they do not trust parents to raise kids anymore. That's the position of the far left. They do not trust parents anymore. And you saw this become a big issue in Virginia years ago. You've seen it become a big issue throughout COVID in some of these school districts where the far left does not trust parents to raise their own kids. And this bill is yet another indication to me of that agenda from the far left. So I haven't seen it got a lot of coverage, and I'm certainly reading between the lines here. But when you see a Democrat bill being opposed by a bunch of extremely far left groups, you got to wonder why. And I see no other reason why these groups would be opposing a bill that probably should be talked about. If kids are committing suicide because of being bullied online, let's talk about ways to stop that from happening. But these groups don't want that because they want to raise your kids. They don't want to let you raise your kids.
Well, we've seen this with other legislation that's, been pushed by some of these far left groups, like, repealing parental notification. Like now we've got a bill that was proposed where if a parent disagrees with their child receiving gender affirming care or, obtaining an abortion, that they could remove that child from the parent's custody. So it's these far left organizations that are continuing to try to drive a wedge between parents and their children because they don't trust parents and they think that they know better for your kids than you do. And it's a serious problem. And it's why people like Ron DeSantis and others have kind of become so popular in the last couple of years, because they've been pushing against this radical far left agenda in their states. And it's resonating with a lot of parents. And I think it's a good opportunity for Republicans to kind of gain some ground because no parent thinks that the government knows better than for their kids than they do. They're your kids, for Pete's sake.
I think we tested the line protect local control of education, protect your control over your kids' education. And that line, it tests astronomically. I don't want to give it away because you got to become a subscriber to Empower to Win if you want all that data that we spend thousands of dollars getting for our subscribers. But the numbers are astronomical on not just Republicans, Democrats, independents, minorities. That line, they 100% agree with what you just said, Michael, which is they want to decide what their kids learn, not some bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. or Springfield. Chris, what were you going to say?
I think you're 100% right here, Colin. I'll tell you why. The people at Pat Brady PAC, otherwise known as Personal PAC, and their buddies over at Planned Parenthood, all they want to see is more children getting abortions. That's what they're in this for. So Pat Brady and all his allies, of course, they're going to oppose this because if it doesn't allow parents to raise their children. All it does, they want to push children to have abortions. That's what they want. That's all they want. That's all they ever wanted. So that's why they're going to oppose this legislation, because they want to be the only voice in the room so Pat Brady can have his wish of an abortion. 100% Illinois. Thank you very much.
As an aside, did you guys catch Juliana Stratton's tweet the other day during the eclipse about abortion?
No, I didn't see that.
That's wild. No, she didn't.
She posted a tweet watching the eclipse or whatever next to whoever's the head of Planned Parenthood, and she's like, "Oh, so cool about the eclipse," and this whole paragraph about a woman's right to choose and all this other stuff. So
it is the number one issue of the Democratic Party. There are no other issues of the Democratic Party. All issues could disappear tomorrow, and the only issue for the Democratic Party would be abortion. There is nothing left. Screw, public education, not an issue. Screw health care for the poor, not an issue. You know what is an issue? Abortion. And it will not stop until that's the only issue we're talking about.
But is everything political? Like, we can't even have an eclipse. We can't even have a football game. We can't do anything without it all becoming political.
It's all about abortion, Colin, even when it isn't. A school board race in frickin' Oconomowoc, Wisconsin is about abortion at the end of the day. It's all about that local library board election in, Mississauga, Ontario. It's about abortion. I'm sure it is. It's all this is about. I'm sick of it.
All right. With that, we've had a packed episode, and I'm appreciative of everybody's time. Let's get some closing thoughts from everybody. Aaron, I want to start with you just because you've been disappointing me. I expected you to light some fires, and really it was the rest of us who lit fires. Chris, me, Michael, you were kind of tame, man.
I know, man. I was so lame today. I was just trying to light the wick. I appreciate it. I love all you guys, Mike, especially you. Like, you're the man, dude. Like, I'm with you. Kyle, Chris, Nate, I don't know you that well, so I'm not going to make it weird yet. But I appreciate everyone having me on. Colin, thank you for your bravery, for having me on and letting me say whatever I want. And I look forward to maybe doing one or two more of these with you guys. As long as you keep having me, I'll keep coming.
All right. Appreciate it. Kyle, I think we had so many different people here who had really strong opinions that unfortunately didn't have any chances to jump in. So here's your chance, man. Final thoughts. All right. I think actually he just texted me and said his Wi-Fi is out, which, look, he's frozen. So bad timing. If Kyle comes back, we'll give him a chance to say some final words. But Kyle's the man. He's one of the hardest working people in politics in Southern Illinois. So poor guy didn't have a chance to give much of his thoughts. But Kyle's a great dude, and I'm glad that he was with us. Nathan, final thoughts on your end, buddy?
I just got to tell you, I'm really excited to see what's going to happen at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago this summer. I think it's going to be not what JB is wanting it to be. So,
well, when you put yourself on the national stage and say, "Hey, everybody, look how we're doing things," you better hope how we're doing things is okay, right?
One would hope.
Yeah. Well, I think you're 100% right. All right, Michael, what do you got?
I don't know. What was I gonna say? We got a country to save. Let's get after it. I think we can. I believe in it. Let's send these radical Democrats packing.
All right, your homework for next week, if I do host next week's episode, is give me something new. Give me something special next week for your closing. All right, Chris, what do you got?
I think Kyle's back, by the way, so if you want to go to him first, you can.
Nah, he's back out again. So, Chris, go ahead.
Okay, so my final thoughts this week is don't let all the negativity of abortion, IVF, any of these issues get you down. The real issues that any candidate needs to focus on, right, left, Republican, Democrat, is making lives better for the people of this damn state. And people on this podcast, myself included, we paint a very bleak picture for how this state is run and the things going on in it. But at the end of the day, there are good people out there trying to make a difference, both Republicans and Democrats, and those are the people who should be amplified. So if you're a good person, keep up the good work. If you're not a good person like Pat Brady, then don't stop what you're doing and reevaluate your life. Thank you and have a wonderful week.
All right, I'll close this out with this. County conventions are next week. So if you're an active Republican, if you're a committee person outside of the Cook County, if you're a precinct captain in Cook County, whenever your conventions are, please show up. Please have your voices heard. A lot of important things happen at those conventions. So have a voice in your party and show up. And let's make sure we're in a position to win come November. So thank you to our guests. Thank you to Lane Davis, our producer. Thank you to my little tiny T-Rex for making a cameo in the episode. We will catch you all next week on the Smoke-Filled Rim.